Dear students, today we will be discussing paper 4, Women and Economics, module 8, Land Ownership and Rights. This module basically deals with one, what is the status of women with respect to land and housing rights, what is women's contribution to the economy and linked with housing rights and land rights, what kind of hurdles are we facing in realization of women's land and housing rights, what have been the international covenants and understanding of the global community with respect to women's land and housing rights, and how can we as citizens and state can work together to make secure tenure for women by ensuring women's land rights and also empowering them to get housing rights. As per the United Nations, women constitute 1/2 of world's population. They do 2/3 of world's work. How come it is 2/3? Because women's work is divided into paid and unpaid work. Major work of women remains unpaid, and for doing this 2/3 of world's work, what they get in return is 1/10 of world's income, and women own only 1% of world's wealth, world's property. Now that shows where are women in the pyramid of economy. I think it is clear that they are at the bottom of the economy. Now women's contribution to the economy is extremely important because women have historically managed unpaid care economy. Unpaid care economy means whatever work women do in terms of cooking, cleaning and caring, also work concerning animal care or kitchen gardening, providing food, fuel, fodder, water in all the subsistence economy. They also are responsible for all the household related matters, and women's contribution to the economy as well as in the society at large remains unrecognized, unrewarded, invisibilized and also not considered in the economic data gathering agency or in the economic system. It is not considered as a contributing to the economic development. I would like to begin with the verses of Amrita Pritam. She has written an epic poem called Darkness of Womb to Silence of Grave, and it goes, I am taking only portion on work because it is a very big poem starting from pre-birth stage of a girl till she goes to the grave, but I am taking the section which is about the work of women. Housewife, the housewife. If a woman's husband is asked, what does his wife do? The answer is, my wife doesn't work. Then, who bears this world in a womb? Who gives birth to the farmers and workers? Who cooks, washes, cleans, fills water? Looks after the child and the sick? Whose labor gives man leisure for liquor or tobacco or card sessions? Whose labor gives man their strength to go to work? Whose labor, without being noticed, mutely working, without being paid, without being appreciated ever. Now it is very, very clear that women do crucial work for the civilization, for the economy, for the society, for the community, for the household and for the family. But still it remains unrecognized, unrewarded, invisibilized. Now with this mindset, it is very, very easy to justify that women should not have right to property. They are just dependent, they are just parasite. And this works in favor of vested interest, which does not allow women to have any income or a property. There are institutional constraints that we have. We have a discriminatory inheritance patterns. Most of, like we have 30,000 customary laws. Most of the customary laws do not allow equal property rights for man and women, for husband and wife, for daughter and son, for mother and father. So the rights are very, very different. In agriculture and also we see that women do not have land rights. Most of the women do not have right to land. land ownership. They work in the field, they do whatever is told to them, they do the backbreaking chores for agricultural production, but they don't have right which crop to use, whether it should have a subsistence crop or a cash crop. Once the crop is ready, who will get the benefits of the produce? Even in a dairy industry, women will do everything. They will bathe the cows and buffaloes, they will bring fuel, fodder for them, they will feed them, they will milch them. The moment milk is ready, man take over. Sale and purchase of milk is in the hands of man. That means they don't have any such right which deals with the monetary aspect, financial aspect. Most of the land reforms we have, they are also male centered. Some customary land reforms in states like Kerala or in Northeast, which allowed women to have land rights, they have also been eroded after codification of these customary laws, because this once they were codified, who codified these laws? These babus were also men. So whenever they codified the law, they always wrote he, him, his. They wrote she, her or hers. So we saw that with the codification, with legislations, women lost out their customary land rights also. When it comes to forest based resources, whether it is a fruits or medicine or herbs or fuel wood, there too the new forest laws have resulted into commercialization of forest, and what we see is that women get criminalized. Women had traditionally rights over forest produce, which has been eroded. When women go to collect fuel or women pluck flowers or fruits or herbs, they are alleged as thieves, they get brutalized. And gender based violence is also very much linked to it. Women are powerless, they are resourceless, they are assetless, and that is why they are more prone to violence against women, violence in their personal lives. The appropriation and privatization of all the communal land, what we used to call Gochar land, which was a village common property land, that is also now monetized, that is also commercialized. So that common property rights which women had, where they could cultivate some vegetables or fruits or some plants, that is also now getting reduced, and women are losing rights over that. As well as we have a very gendered control over all the economic resources and also right to land use and right to work. So we see that when it comes to right to work, for man it is natural to work. In case of women, whenever women are used as an auxiliary labor, last to be hired and first to be fired. So whenever society or a community or an economy needs, there is a shortage of labor, immediately you would train women. Okay, when in all southern countries, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Andhra Pradesh, where there was all men started migrating to Gulf countries, there was a tremendous shortage of skilled labor. You did not get turner, fitter, carpenter, plumber, and that was the time they started training rural girls, that now because there is a shortage, there is no carpenter, there is no plumber, there is no electrician in the village. So this is how. But the moment this men come back, they would say that you go back. Now women are not, this skilled work women can't do. No, so this kind of attitude even the economy has had with women, and these factors result into women losing their right to housing or their right to land. So many state governments have come up with, Andhra Pradesh was the first state where Mr. NTR, Chief Minister, as a Chief Minister, he gave land rights to women. In Maharashtra, we got land rights in a very partial sense, because the legislation or the government ruling says that man willing, women can have a right to land and housing. But men are never willing. So to get these two words removed, man willing, it is such a Herculean task. It's an uphill task. State Commission for Women has tried at several times, but we have not been able to do. So this kind of conceptual biases, we have operational biases, because the biases of the bureaucracy, like in so many SRA, slum rehabilitation authorities schemes, where the slums are demolished and the new housing societies they come up. In that also, if for a single woman or for a woman headed household, it becomes a very difficult problem, because the engineers in SRA, they would not make the title of the house, they will not make in the name of a woman. Even if she has a 16-year-old son, the title will be made in the name of son, but this woman who is a widow or a divorcee, she would not get it. So these are called operational biases. In the rule book, it is written that women headed households should have a woman title in the name of a woman. But in operational, in reality, it does not happen because of the biases. Whenever any disaster takes place, whenever any mega development project takes place, people are displaced and relocated. So in the original community where women had land rights or they had housing rights, when they do the relocation, at that time the title is made in the name of male members. So even cases, there have been cases after cases where women have lost their traditional historic land rights which they had, that is also gone. Now, why are we talking about right to land and housing for women? Why suddenly in the 21st century there is a tremendous concern about women's housing rights and land rights all over the world, not only in India. Even the widows of the farmers who have committed suicide, they say that they are not happy with the relief package only in a monetary term. Even if half an acre of land is given to them, they said that would provide them sustenance throughout their life, rather than this relief package of 1 lakh or 2 lakhs rupees, which could be chewed up within 6 months or a year. So we are talking about land rights of women and housing rights of women, because once you have your own plot of land and a house, it lessens the threat of discrimination. You are a property owner, you face less discrimination. Second one, in the different types of violence that you have, a propertyless woman can be treated as a disposable item, can be dispensed with, can be violated very easily, while the woman with property, she gets rights in a domestic arena, in her conjugal life, in her matrimonial life, in the parental home, within the community also, and at a societal level, her prestige is more. Third one is that when you do not have a house of your own or even a plot of land of your own, even political participation is affected, because you do not have right to take any decision in your personal life, you are treated as a dependent, and you would avoid being active in political processes. Other violations of their economic rights, such as enterprise development, if they want say to start a business, if they want to become self-employed, they do not have any collateral to show to the bank to get the loan, to raise money, to raise funds, to establish the business. They have nothing to fall back upon. And that is why it is very important that in a market economy, if women want to negotiate their dignified survival, then it is important for them to have a right to land and right to housing. We have international documents. UN has taken a very important measures in terms of covenants and declarations. The most important is UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. As per Article 17 and 25, land rights are ensured to women. In 1951, we had housing rights for refugees, where there were so many war refugees, or India had refugees due to partitions. Several countries who came out of the colonial past and who came out of the colonial rule, they also had this problems of refugees, and housing rights of refugees have also been granted by the UN. Housing rights of indigenous people, those who have been the aboriginals or the indigenous people or the tribal population, about that there is no clarity, there is nothing, nothing is adopted by UN. While Article 17 of the United Nations International Covenant talks about the civil and political rights of citizens, including women, that was adopted in 1966. And as per Article 11 of 1966 Covenant, it also talks about economic, social and cultural rights. Within that also housing rights and land rights are ensured. UN Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, that means CEDAW. CEDAW was Article 13 to 16 talk about land rights and housing rights. When we come to India, the Constitution of India, which says that as per Article 14, there is equal protection of laws within the territory of India to all its citizens irrespective of caste, class, ethnicity, race and religion and gender. Article 15.1, 15.2 and 15.3, they talk about prohibition of discrimination on the basis of sex and affirmative action policies for women and children. Within affirmative action also land rights are very important, and several states have taken various types of affirmative actions, Andhra Pradesh being the leading state. Andhra Pradesh state government was the first to declare land and property rights for women during mid-90s. Amendments in the Hindu Code Bill after the public interest litigation which was filed by demanding co-partnership rights for Hindu daughters, that also we managed to get by 2005. Two sisters, Lata Mittal and her younger sister, they gave up their studies after father died and took up job. They raised the family, they look after their younger brothers, they educated them, brothers got married, they had children. And by then Lata Mittal and her sister, they were in their middle age, and married brothers and sister-in-laws told them to leave the house and go and stay either in a hostel or old age home. And these sisters who had given all their life for their family and were supported the widowed mother, filed public interest litigation in Supreme Court of India challenging Mitakshara laws, which goes by seed and soil theory. Man is a seed and woman is a soil, and if you plant a seed in a soil and the sapling comes up, the fruits, it bears fruits, tree bears fruits, and the fruit, who has a right to the fruits? They say man, because man has given the seed. So this seed and soil theory was challenged, Mitakshara laws were challenged, because we also believe in the Mitakshara laws. The foundation of Mitakshara laws is seed and soil theory, which says that inherited property can be managed only by sons. So co-partnership rights over inherited property is with the son. That was challenged. After 10 years of their battle, legal battle, finally they won the case, and now all Indian Hindu daughters have a right to ancestral property. So it is not only a matrimonial property or Daya Bhaga which a widow gets, but she has a right to, Hindu daughter has a right to property. When it comes to women's right to housing, there is a very interesting history we have, because women's right to housing is linked with women's right in the property, land and inheritance. And as the primary user of housing, women's stakes and requirements are very, very high, because for women, house is just not a place to sleep. It is their workshop. They work whole day. Women work in the house. They do cooking, they do caring, they do all types of extra economic work activities. They do home based work. So for women, it is not only a shelter. House is not only a shelter, but it is also a place of employment, place for social interaction, community work, community building, place for child care and refuge from social instability and sexual violence. Once you have your house, you are socially stable, there is a safety. If you are homeless, then you are your woman's life becomes extremely risky. There are special needs for women-headed household. This is a very important category about which lot of work is done by economists right from 1970, mid-70s till the date. There are several studies done by Professor Praveen Visaria, Professor Leela Visaria, Professor Parth Sarthi on socio-economic profile of women-headed households. Now, in the peaceful areas, it is found that generally 10% of the households are women-headed households, which are managed, economically managed, where major economic burden of running the household is shouldered by divorced, deserted or single women, or women who are facing long term migration, whether it is a rural urban migration or cross country migration. In the conflict prone areas, 1/3 of the households are women headed households, because there is a war and conflict takes away lot of men's lives. So it is basically 33% households are managed by women. Women headed households are also poorest of the poor households as per all the studies done by sociologists or anthropologists or economists. Even if these households have money, they face hurdles while looking out for a rented place. If a woman, even if she is earning well, it is difficult for a woman to get a rented place or even to own a house. The whole housing market is so hostile to women. Unless you have a man accompanying you, it is very difficult for a woman to get own housing, even after paying money. Contribution of the women's rights movement has been very important in this context, because housing rights have been major concern of women's movement in the last 30 years. When women's groups started providing support or institutional backing to women in difficult circumstances, women victim of violence, domestic violence, or women victim of dowry harassment, or women who are raped and abandoned by the family, it was easy to get job for these women. It was relatively easy to enroll them in the colleges or schools. But the most important challenge that they faced was where to provide them shelter, where to give them housing. So the most difficult task was to get accommodation of these women who are in difficult circumstances, who have no one to turn to, who are abandoned by their families, who have been at the receiving end of violence, desertion, rejection, or fraud, or even cheating by relatives. So that we have seen. We have seen after Kumbh Mela, every Kumbh Mela, how thousands and thousands of women in their middle age are left behind by their own family members. This has been happened. This happened in Kumbh Mela in 2000. It happened in 2009 also. So we know that how women face this kind of homelessness. Now, women's right to stay in a parental and matrimonial home, that is now at least we have some legal support in terms of, like, for last 20 years, like, women's groups have filed petitions in high courts and session courts and Supreme Court of India demanding wives' right to stay in a matrimonial home and daughters' right to stay in a parental home. The major challenge that we face is gender biases in the housing problem, because there is a gendered construct of social and economic relations within and outside the household, and also deeply entrenched patriarchy which discriminates against women in a virtually every aspect of housing, whether it is a policy development. So the policy of housing, what kind of caveats and articles and sections that you insert, entitlement in the government projects, that whether there is a displacement, there is a relocation, what kind of entitlements women of the household would have it, control over household resources, whatever resources you have in your house, whether it is a land or your share or your capital, women don't have any right. Right to inheritance, most of the communities are not giving right to inheritance. Even when you have it on paper, it is not implemented in personal life. Any woman who asks for property rights is considered to be quarrelsome and jealous of her brother, and she is no relative likes her because she demands property rights. So there is so much of psychological pressure also on a woman to be more sacrificing. She should sacrifice for her brother, she should sacrifice for her husband, but she should not demand her right. Ownership of resources also, women, there is an aversion that towards women owning the resources, and construction of household. The whole construction industry is also extremely male dominated, whether it is contractors or builders and all, they all have their strong biases. Now SEWA is the only organization, trade union, which has now created a construction company where women are bidding for contract, and it is limited to city of Ahmedabad. If they expand in other cities also, it will come up. International human rights law on security of tenure that we have as defined by United Nations, which says that a person is said to have secure tenure if he or she is protected from being removed arbitrarily and involuntarily from their homes and lands. Second, tenure is secure if it is protected by legislation rather than protected merely through customs and tradition. That means now when you have a law which says that no woman or no girl can be thrown out by her father or a husband, that she is protected, that she will not be homeless. So, it is very important that we have the protective legislation. United Nations has also given a very important comment on forced eviction, and I quote, "Women and other vulnerable individuals and groups suffer disproportionately from practice of forced eviction. Women in all groups are especially vulnerable given the extent of statutory and other forms of discrimination which often apply in relation to property rights, including home ownership or rights of access to property or accommodation, and their particular vulnerability to the acts of violence and sexual abuse when they are rendered homeless." And this is United Nations Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights 16th session 1997 has said that. And that is why UN has recommended to all the nation states to give security of tenure to women of their country. There is a threat to women's security of tenure. The circumstances and conditions that threaten this kind of a security for women is: 1. Gender biased laws preventing women from owning, inheriting, purchasing, leasing, renting, bequeathing, housing, land and property rights. So, there are so many countries in which women do not have any legislative protection about this. Not only that, they do not even allow women to own or inherit or purchase house. Second one is judicial interpretation of the law. You may have a very good law, you may have a right to land ownership or right to housing ensured to women in a law book, but no explicit or this thing that forbidding women's right to housing in a gender neutral law. It is still they create the obstacle, because the interpretation by the officers and the administration will not be in favor of women, because if it is gender neutral. So, it is very clear cut. You have to, even when you evolve a law, you have to write the way UN writes, he or she. If you just write only he, then women will not get any rights. Land and housing systems, as they grant titles to private property to the heads of the household into inverted comma, who are often deemed man. So, there is a general, like in a operational reality, if any clerk or an administrator is there, they would say head of the household, ghar ka mukhya, they consider as a man. They would never accept that there is a woman who is the head of the household, who is shouldering major economic responsibility of the family. So, that also goes against women. Most of the countries, they which follow like customary laws, tradition, certain attitudes that you have, that in our community we do not have any woman to owning a house, or no woman can have land. How can woman own land? So, this kind of behavior and this kind of practices also go against women. Other thing is domestic violence, that you may have excellent law, but fear of violence will not allow women to exercise the right. So, even when women have a right to property, they would just will away their property. She would voluntarily declare that I do not want my share in the property because of fear of violence, ostracization or social boycott. So, that is also happening in a big way. There are also financial and material barriers that women face, because gender biased policies in financing for housing, availability of services, material and infrastructure, affordability, habitability, accessibility, location and even cultural adequacy to handle political economy of housing is a major challenge. Difficulties in securing loans for purchase of good quality housing, so called credit worthiness, which women lack. Problems of rental housing, age of women, because now the major challenge with the world is finding is increasing number of homeless women. That is the scenario even in cities of India, where you see increasingly women in the age group of 45 plus, they are increasingly homeless. They are driven out either by their adult married sons or by their other family members. Indian NGOs, women's organizations, women's rights groups, they have had 2 decades of a very important debates on women's right to housing. Some say that it should be independent of male ownership or control, because women's land use priorities are very different from that of men. That is one approach. SEWA has used that approach. Second one is the approach of a joint titles. Majority of poor masses hardly manage to have even one house. So, how can you think about separate house for women on a large scale? But the felt need is that we need to create training manuals to deal with modalities of attaining women's right to housing, whether it is independent, independently owned by women, or by joint titles, the approach which Masoom has adopted or Spark has adopted. So, SEWA believes in the inclusion of women's name in the title to property before granting loans to the housing. That is a self-employed women's organization led by Ila Bhatt. As monetary benefits accrue to family, husband or father and family members accept the proposal for joint titles to land and housing. Women contractors are also aiming to become builders. SEWA has tried that. Spark is another organization, they have a Mahila Milan. Their network of payment dwellers, and they assist Mahila Milan to get recognition and support from the settlements. They also train them, they give them skills, and they make resources available for a low cost housing. That experiment has taken place in a large scale in Mumbai. State and civil society initiatives are also very important. Progressive states have empowered women by granting housing rights. For example, building societies in Sweden, England, unions in Germany, self-help groups and cooperative enterprises in Canada, Central and Latin America, Africa and Asia. The enlightened nation states accept societal responsibility for women's housing, and the rest leave it to the individual women to fend for themselves in the market. That if market is supportive, then you go ahead. Women have also faced massive witch hunting in housing. Most of the cases of witch killing, Bhutali or Dain, they are linked to proper land rights and housing rights. Mostly it is a single women who are targeted. In 2001 in Kumbh Mela, nearly 60,000 women were deserted by their own family members. All of them happened to be aging women, disposed of by their own family members. Sarpanch, Talati, Tehsildars, they are also taking advantage of illiterate women by getting the land rights, dispossessing them of their land rights. In certain countries, like you also see that women headed households were burnt. International Committee on Women Living Under Muslim Laws has also taken up women's land rights and housing rights issues in several countries. There has been an action agenda evolved by women's organizations that women's lands and housing right need to be understood from the point of view of women's right to dignified life. Women should not face any discrimination in exercising their rights to land and housing, irrespective of their caste, class, age, religion, ethnicity. State and civil society initiatives must facilitate the process of women's empowerment through exercising of women's right to housing. Local self-government bodies should reserve 10% of all the houses, flats, industrial units and shops in the market spaces for women. That has been the demand made by women corporators also in several cities and even in the rural Panchayati Raj institutions. There should be active social reform movement to go along with the legal reform movements, because if we have progressive law but the society's mindset is not in favor of women's rights, then we can't go ahead. That's why both societal consciousness, gender sensitivity, gender awareness and the support of the state should go hand in hand to ensure women's right to land and housing. We can conclude this topic by asserting that women's right to land and housing are extremely important for the dignified life, and that's why not only state but the civil society and the women's organizations also have to play a very important role in sensitizing people with this whole complexity of political economy of housing and how to negotiate more space for women in the housing and land rights.